A Place Called Home by Laurie Wick. Chapter 47. Good morning, Mrs. Hall. I hope I'm not calling too early. No, Sheriff, please come in. Is there some place where we can talk? Mrs. Hall led the way into Joshua Bennet's study. She offered the sheriff some refreshment, but he declined. We found Carl Maxwell's body. He drowned. Mrs. Hall's hand flew to her mouth, and she gasped in horror. From the condition of the body, my guess it was some time ago. There's no way for us to tell if it was an accident or deliberate. You mean suicide? Mrs. Hall asked unbelievingly. No, I mean murder. Mrs. Hall sat heavily into a chair. The sheriff stood over her. He hated to upset her, but she was his link to the Bennet family, and he needed her. Are you all right? Mrs. Hall fanned herself with her handkerchief. Yes, Sheriff, I'm okay. I just wasn't expecting any news of this sort. I can assure you, Mrs. Hall, if there were any other way to handle this, I would. Of course, Sheriff. Mrs. Hall breathed deeply to compose herself. What can I do to help? Have you found anything in your search here in the study? No, I've been through hundreds of papers, but nothing that appears to be of utmost importance. I wish Christine were here. Mrs. Hall shot up out of the chair. Christine! If Carl Maxwell was possibly murdered, they might be after Christine. That's the next thing I needed to discuss with you. The sheriff summarized what the sheriff from Baxter had written. By the time he got to the burned man at the hotel, he was sure Mrs. Hall was going to faint. But to his surprise, she was made of tougher stuff than that. She composed herself after some minutes. I must admit to you, Sheriff, I have been most ignorant of how serious all this has become. And I'm sorry to upset you, but you can see why I need your help. I've been to see Vince Jeffers twice, and he nearly slams the door in my face over a simple few questions. Mr. Jeffers is not an easy man. There is something about him I can't quite place. Mrs. Hall shrugged. Will you write Miss Bennet about Carl Maxwell? I hate to, but I really must. She needs to be on her guard. Her letters are very cheerful, and I hate to put a damper on her happiness, but she must know. Please tell her to be careful and that I'm continuing my investigation here. Mrs. Hall went then to prepare a light tea and handed the sheriff a few papers she had put aside. There was nothing pertinent, and as he left, he encouraged her to keep searching.